Amazing. Welcome, 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 everyone. I am so excited to be here today. 237 people already in this room. I need to know where you're calling in from. So please let me know your name, your organization, where you're joining us from in the chat. I am thrilled about the conversation that is about to come here on the innovation stage. So we are going to dive in just a quick moment. But I'm so excited that you are joining us today. Tell me in the chat who you are. I need to know the chat's working. I'm not seeing it. So are you guys there? You can give me an emoji. Okay, Deb, thank you for breaking through. Sherry, here we go. Okay, I want to know who you are, where you're calling us from. People keep asking me how I still, oh, Libby, hi, my friend. People keep asking me how I'm still talking and how I'm handling my throat right now. So I'm going to give you my behind the scenes secrets. I have the largest water bottle on the face of the planet and a full throat lozenge bag right here. So if you hear me, I'm going a little hoarse, but that's just because I'm loving being with all of you. And I'm so excited about what we have coming next on this stage. No playbook, no problem. Building a mission aligned AI policy and implementation plan from the ground up. You are in for a real treat here. We are being joined by Maarten, Bout, Kim Reeves, and David Schroeder. Let me tell you a little bit about each of them. So Maarten Bout, CFRE, leads major and transformational giving at United Way of Central Indiana, inspiring generosity to advance opportunity and equity. With 20 plus years in the nonprofit sector, he has held leadership roles at Indiana University and arts organizations and is passionate about ethical, human-centered fundraising. Kim is the fundraising administration senior manager at United Way of Central Indiana, overseeing daily operations and supporting strategic initiatives. With 10 plus years in the nonprofit sector and certifications in Salesforce, business analysis, and project management, she brings technical expertise to enhance donor engagement and advance key initiatives, including CRM implementation and AI powered tools. And David serves as the fundraising research and analytics director at United Way of Central Indiana, leading the AI task force to drive innovation in fundraising and operations. With 8 years experience across higher education, healthcare, and tech transfer and service in the Indiana Army National Guard, he brings a data-driven approach to improving efficiency and strategy. I am so thrilled that you are getting to witness these three incredible leaders talking together about this strategy and how to build AI policy and implementation from all of their vantage points. What an incredible demonstration of like teamwork and collaboration here. So I'm just going to get out of the way and let y'all take over because I'm going to be learning here too. So thank you so much. Take it away.
Oh, thank you so much, Mallory. Yeah, no, we were asking like, how are you? Like, you've been on this for about 6 or 7 hours at this point, so we're really deeply impressed with that. Your voice still sounds so crystal clear. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I saw that we have people from Bangkok to Boston on this call. I hope that everybody on the West Coast has lunch, and everybody in Bangkok has a very strong cup of coffee because we are talking about AI policy today. It's not always the most energizing topic for most people, except for us nerds here. And thank you so much for joining us. This session that we're going to do is really a story about some of your colleagues that are going through pretty much the same thing that you're probably going through now. So we hope that this will be meaningful for you. And it is kind of a nice complement to a session earlier today by Scott Rosenkrantz. It was called No Jargon, Just Action. So if you are interested, go back in the session schedule and see if you can watch that episode as well. It's about a policy document that Fundraising AI has put together. It will be very, very helpful. So yeah, once again, my name is Maarten Bout, and I'm here with my colleagues, fellow nerds and co-conspirators, Kim and David. And we hope that you leave today's presentation with a little bit of a sense of direction. It is how you might guide your organization through adopting responsible and beneficial AI, and some concrete steps on what to take next. We will walk you through our process from the initial charge that we received from our CEO and our board, through the assembly of our task force, the discovery process, our policy development, all the way to the implementation stages that we're currently in. And we'll share some examples that we built on, but we will also specifically focus on some of the detours and dead ends that we took that we want to help you avoid. So bear with us because this is going to be a cramming a 9-month process in about that went pretty in the weeds in about 45 minutes. So here we go. The charge that we got in the primordial ooze days of last year, when the most explosive version of ChatGPT had just come out, we had a presentation at a board retreat from then TechPoint Senior Vice President Dennis Trinkle about AI. And after that, our board and our president and CEO, Fred Payne, asked our team to chart a path for adopting AI at United Way of Central Indiana, and at the same time become a leader in our region's human services sector. And that may sound a little highfalutin, like becoming a leader immediately for something that is a new technology. But if you know that we do support about 250 organizations helping distance people from poverty in food security, housing, childcare, and early education, who often don't really have the staff or funds to necessarily even keep the lights on in their buildings. We do have a role to play there. We support this sector to a very deep degree, and we have the capacity and the funding to take the experimentation on us. The reality was, when we started looking at this, that really not much was available. There was not many good examples of how to do this were out there, nor policies. And within our network, we looked to see if there's any partner organizations that did have AI use policies, and we found exactly one. And that one had a policy that said, don't use AI, which of course was not at all helpful for us, because we wanted to create a policy that actually did indeed allow our teams to start using AI. So we did find some early pioneers, like the Urban Institute, that had organized a couple of task forces, one of senior leaders and one of more early career professionals. And then we found that the education organization Intentional Futures had published a rubric on how to evaluate AI tools and their use in education. And we really use that as inspiration on how we should approach our process. So our process, with the benefit of hindsight being 2020, is really this. We did not know that it was going to be this when we started, but in the following presentation, we want to walk you through all of these phases, for which the assembly that was the first, the task force assembly was the first step. Took about 2 weeks. Discovery, policy development, that took several months each, and implementation is currently underway. So while we don't have a more concrete piece of advice for the amount of time that you should spend, like we have spent 9 months so far, a little bit more of 9 months, we can tell you some of the steps that you need to take. And the first step that you need to do is to put a good team together. And for that purpose, I'll hand it over to Kim, who's going to talk a little bit more about how we put together our AI task force.
So as Maarten said, it's time to kind of compile our group, our little group of AI heroes. So this group was very large, as you can see from all of our pictures, but it was an all volunteer group of individuals. We also needed this group to be cross-functional or cross-departmental. So all these people range from every single department in our organization, and also every level within our organization. We wanted to make sure this group had not only our C-suite and our managers, but it also has individual contributors, because with their wide background and experience and on the ground use of AI, then we can get the most perspectives and real world applications going forward. But one of the most important things I think we did is we made sure this group had some people who were very, very excited about AI. And there were some people who were very, very hesitant about AI. Not only did this have some really good conversation in the task force overall, but I think it kept our work really grounded. It gave us a really healthy level of caution, but it also had plenty of excitement to just keep going. I think if we had only had one group or the other, we could have fallen into some really terrible pitfalls. Either we would have gone too fast or we would have gone too slow. So having the group that was very cross-departmental, all experience levels, and had that healthy excitement and that healthy hesitancy was really important for us going forward. Let me pass it over to David, who will talk about the much lengthier process of discovery.
Thank you, Kim. So for our group, since we had our task force, we had members from different divisions. What we really needed to figure out is how are people already using AI? We knew they were, but we weren't totally sure. And so what we found was there were 46 different ways in which people were using AI in the organization already. And we were leveraging about 18 different tools or platforms. ChatGPT was overwhelmingly the number one tool being used. Then Kim and I took all of the use cases and really tried to categorize them down to figure out, all right, what are the key things people are looking at here? And from there, we got 6 major categories, but then 3 really dominated. One, copywriting. That's not surprising. We all know how good the copywriting is in the AI platforms. That was one of the features and tools it was able to do well earliest. Another was data analysis. This was particularly interesting because the divisions that were doing the data analysis weren't necessarily data teams. So that was a good indicator that people were trying to get information and trying to do some things themselves. And then recruitment and HR activities, again, primarily there for copywriting. So once we got through that, we looked at all of our things. We realized that despite all the different tools and terminology, the staff were really clustering just around a few business functions. So then we needed to take a look at what kind of risks was our organization opening ourselves up to, or were our team members looking at? And so the core principle for us was also the AI benefits can't come at the cost of our values and our missions. Being nonprofit, it's important that we're helping our community, helping society get better. We don't want to undo with the left hand what we're doing with the right hand. So again, for our risk assessment, we really looked at identifying the potential downsides. And what we found is most of the concerns around AI were the same, regardless of the application or the use cases. So the number one thing was data privacy, security, and confidentiality. We meet with donors. We have people that work with representatives of the state, and we had to make sure we weren't going to expose any of that. Another major concern was bias and fairness. AI is programmed by people. People have their own bias. It is inevitable it will be injected into these systems. So how do we use it as a tool without taking that and it filtering into our own work? There's also a lot of concern about the reliability of these tools. If Kim and I give the same prompt to the same tool, we might get different outputs. And how does that start impacting things if we're trying to work on a basic data set or get reliable information? Another major concern was the intellectual property. We know that these tools have been trained on other people's intellectual property. So if we're using them to help write copy, draft documents, strategy, anything it might be, does that open ourselves up to an issue there or liability? We're also very concerned about how this impacted our actual staff. What's that human impact? What does it do to people's sense of creativity, their agency, and then how might it end up affecting job displacement? And then one of the other major issues was our reputation as an organization, and what did it mean for other stakeholders and their sense of trust within us. So as we worked through that, we started running into a couple of different false starts, as we're calling them. And so these false starts, these were places that we started going down a path, and then we realized this isn't going to work. These are dead ends. We need to take a step back. We need to reset. The first one, what we're calling the endless list approach. Initially, we said, well, why don't we just create a list of do's and don'ts? That's too easy. The problem is AI, it's an ever expanding Swiss Army knife. As soon as you start writing this do's and don'ts list, it's already outdated. It also touches so many different kinds of abilities, tools, divisions, and outputs. It's just absolutely impossible to do that. So don't do that. The other major one we bumped into was the philosophy rabbit hole. There's a lot of really important, meaningful conversations to be had about AI, ethics, morality, its impact on everybody. These are great topics. And me personally, I can end up talking about them for hours and hours, but what that's going to do is get in the way of actually getting things done. You're not going to get 14 people in a room to all agree on the rightness or wrongness of AI. It's just not going to happen. And at the same time, you're going to end up frustrating the people like me that just want to go do stuff. Just tell me what I need so I can go execute. That's not to say there's not a great place for these conversations or that it was a waste of time. Particularly the conversations around the ethics did help inform our overall framework so that we were looking at what matters most to our organization when we were setting that up. But ultimately, we did have to move past that to create actionable policy. So the major takeaway on that one is just perfect philosophical alignment isn't required for practical policy. Obviously, you need some level of consensus, but you're just not going to get everybody on the same page. And then sometimes you just have to stop debating and start doing. And so, Maarten?
And that's exactly what we did. The silver lining of those 2 false starts really was that we realized that the do's and don'ts list was not going to help us. So we needed some other vehicle in order to do that. And at that point, we really were experimenting. So we were asking hard questions, we were debating, and out of that came a shared sense that we needed a shared compass. So out of that kind of discussion emerged a policy. What we realized through those conversations is that we really had 2 primary responsibilities with setting up the policy and the guardrails with which we're going to implement AI in our organization. First one was capture the potential. This was the charge, capture AI's potential to accomplish our mission to a higher degree. And the second one, do that while looking out for the interest of our stakeholders. This was a very, very clear thing that we found that any policy, any guardrails that we would in place would have to balance both of these things. So the policy we developed had all the trappings of a regular policy: background, scope, definition, purpose statement, et cetera, et cetera. But rather than to be a compliance document that really said, like, you cannot do this or you cannot do that, it is more of a framework that guides human behavior. And to get to that point, we really discussed at length, and of course, this was part of the second rabbit hole, and the work was very important there. We discussed our organizational values, our mission, our vision, our other guiding documents like our diversity, equity, and inclusion statements, and external documents like the fundraising AI framework. Right now, there is a great draft governance document out that Scott talked about this morning, like I already said. It is worthwhile to look it up because that kind of like figures into how we use the fundraising AI framework. Our use cases and our risk assessment. This is what we use to really put together this policy. And like David said, we considered what the actual implications were of some of the risks. So we work in economic mobility as one of our big issue areas that we are involved in. So how do we guide our teams to use AI consistent with doing that better rather than making that problem worse? So we wrote a policy that covers the entire organization. So regardless whether you're an individual contributor using ChatGPT or Claude, or you are our tech ops vice president, who is actually Dennis Trinkle. We hired him from TechPoint to lead this for us. And you're building an enterprise system that does work unseen in the background. All of our AI use is viewed through the same lens of this policy. So the policy that we developed really became an ethical framework. And we landed on these 3 escalating levels of AI use. And this should look very familiar with people who are familiar with the fundraising AI framework as well. For us, those 3 levels are acceptable use, in which our AI use meets all the legal and regulatory requirements, which safeguard privacy and trust. Responsible use goes one step further and doesn't just say like, hey, we have to stay legal, but really mitigates the risk inherent in the tools that we use and tries to minimize unintentional harm. Then the next level, the top level of that, is beneficial use. And that covers those uses that make us better at achieving our mission and making, for us specifically, Central Indiana a better place for all. Looking through this lens, this framing safeguards our most deeply held values and acknowledges our responsibility to keep people safe, but also our commitment to doing better at achieving our mission. Nested underneath these 3 big categories, you see 16 ethical standards that guide our team's AI use, as you can see. In acceptable, again, that is very, very straightforward. don't break any laws, keep data secure, private information private. I'll give you one quick example of that. Just don't put private identifiable information into free ChatGPT because they are training their models on it and your donor name has no place there. Responsible is a little bit more complex, right? So don't do harm while you're trying to do good and don't break trust. And I'll give you a handful of examples because this one gets a little more complicated. Make sure that AI tools are not inadvertently or by design perpetuating stereotypes. If you saw John Fruchterman's talk this afternoon, I really encourage you going back there because he talked about like how if it is trained on all writing for humanity, you can imagine that a lot of things that are baked in there may not be things that we want to perpetuate today, right? So, think about like the context in which you're using the tools and the stereotypes you may be inadvertently leaning into. Make sure information is accurate. Like David already said, we have real concerns about accuracy. So you need to make sure that humans need to verify the end product for appropriateness, accuracy, and whether the end product is fit for other humans' consumption. And then for us, it's important that we disclose whenever we use AI, that AI was used in the process. So whenever we process data with the use of an AI tool, we will mark it with a little label that AI was used to do that. Same with image generation and text generation. Now, beneficial, again, that is the most complex because that's really our aspirational level. That is really doing good, building trust. Rather than not losing trust, it's really building trust and shaping the future through achieving our mission better. So we want our team members to ask themselves the questions, what I'm doing with AI, is this really a business improvement? And articulate why it is a business improvement. Does this use have a positive social impact? Is the use sustainable environmentally, financially, and humanly? That's something that we are really concerned with, and we need to answer the question with a yes. Does it present fundamental change in how we accomplish our mission? And does it proactively include everyone, rather than just not making sure that it doesn't inadvertently exclude people? Proactively including everyone is a completely different way of engaging with AI. Something I want to echo that other speakers today have said, like if you're creating policy, that policy for your organization is for your organization. So we're going to make available our policy to everybody who's on this call. But our policy is our policy. It's inspired by our mission, vision, and values. And since I already said, like there was at least one person in Thailand on this call, the legal landscape in Thailand looks completely different than in the US. So make sure that if you take inspiration from our policy to really adapt it to your current situation. You may have cultural reasons for that, legal reasons for that. Your mission will probably be different. We cannot underscore how important it is for you to take a look at this kind of policy through the lens of your mission, and then base your guidelines around that. I want to end this part with a little bit of a success story, because I think some of you may want like, well, what's the change from before your policy and after your policy? And the one that I'm most proud of is this single incident of a colleague who I knew was very, very opposed to AI because she felt very, very strongly that it was going to cost people their jobs. And a few weeks ago, after we had officially adopted this policy, she came to me very enthusiastically saying, like, hey, I've got some ideas on how we can infuse AI in my work and do this at a much larger scale, much faster, and in a much better way. And I think it is because she saw reassurance in the fact that we had a policy that really focused on being true to our mission, being true to our values, and how that really gives her the belief and the trust that we're doing the right thing with the tools that we're going to use. The next step that we're right smack in the middle of is our implementation phase. And Kim is going to talk a little bit more about that.
Thanks, Maarten. So after months, my goodness, after many months, it was time for us to roll this out. So our very first step was actually getting lead team buy-in. So after it left our task force, it went to the lead team of our organization. They had their rounds of edits, and then it went to our board. It was very, very important to get our board on board, per se, but it was important for them to also believe in our policy and believe it fit our mission and our values. That not only helped us present a united front when we gave it to the rest of our staff, but it also provided us with like a solid background to go back to. If people had questions, the board were there to back us up, and they had their own questions about how this was going to fit into our lives going forward. So after all the approvals took place, which was many rounds of approvals, many rounds of questions, then it was time to give it to our staff. So we had a tiny group break off from our task force. This group was really focused on implementation. Rather than having the whole 14-person task force focus on implementation, my goodness, we had a small group work on it. The reason we had that small group work on it is this, as David has previously said, we had a group of doers who really just wanted to get things done. So that small group of doers was really there to guide implementation so that we could get it out the door, rather than continue having really good philosophical conversations. We just needed to get it out since we already had all of the approval. So with that, we took it to an all-team meeting. We launched the policy, a self-assessment tool, and the beginning of a use case library at that all-team meeting. We gave space for questions. If anyone had concerns, they could raise them there. We also left it as an open-ended. If they have concerns or questions later, they can come back to us or anyone on the task force. After that, I would say that things have really taken off from there. So we have two separate pilot programs right now. One of them is with ChatGPT, which is the most widely used across our organization. The other one is with Copilot. Copilot already fits into our existing ecosystem of Microsoft products, which a majority of us use, but not everyone. And so that's why we went with those two pilot programs. Those pilot programs are full of cross-divisional people. So we know how everyone across the organization is using it, but also so they can bring up red flags or green flags about how their department can use those different programs. So not only did that help just the wide comfort level of AI across our organization, once people felt that we had protected tools, since these were enterprise pilots, I feel like people got a little more comfortable with using AI and asking it questions and seeing how it could benefit them rather than take over parts of their job. And with that, our use case library has kind of boomed. It's grown organically from where it started. And so going forward, the organization will continue to use AI. It will continue to grow. And so we're going to implement monthly governance and quarterly policy check-ins just to make sure everything about it is still serving us, and just to make sure everyone is feeling okay with how we're going forward with AI. The comfort level of our staff really fits into our mission. And so making sure that everyone is comfortable going forward is super important for us. So I will hand it back to Maarten. Well, you're on mute, Maarten.
Yeah. So our advice to you, if you are in the same boat, if you are looking at like how do you guide your organization through this kind of change and adoption of a technology that very few of us were ready for, and is moving so much faster than any of us are used to, we have three big pieces of advice. And I hope that actually one of these will answer a question that we saw in the question and answer tab over there. So inclusion is your key to success. If you start with a diverse group with like many different backgrounds in terms of age, role, level of enthusiasm, you get better outcomes. We do really believe that, yes, it added to like making sure that all of those viewpoints were reconciled. But adding especially those people who say, hey, hold on a sec, can we think about this for a second, is really important, so that you don't leave any like Achilles heel unexamined. Because this is something that is, especially policy that for technologies that can have such far-reaching effects on your organization, it's really important. You don't want to have to build back trust with donors who inadvertently get a message that they shouldn't have gotten, for example. Bring in your mission, values, goals, and guide human behavior rather than dictate technology. We're not going to tell Sam Altman what he's going to go do with ChatGPT, where you don't have any influence in the tech space, but you do have influence over your teams and over how they actually apply the tools at their disposal. So give them something to hold on to, really bringing your mission, bringing your values and your goals and what you're trying to do with your organization, and inspire your teams to use AI in that kind of way. And then the last one, be ready for change. I saw Nathan Chappelle probably a year and a half ago talk about, like, hey, this is a technology that is really developing exponentially. And you know what? At that point, I don't think I'd ever been part of something where somebody talked about something developing exponentially, but this is moving super fast. And you cannot build a policy or an implementation tool without being flexible. The example here is that David and I were on a webinar about a year ago where somebody was talking about ChatGPT rolling out their voice tool in the next few months, and 5 minutes later, ChatGPT rolled out their voice tool. This is moving so fast, few of us are prepared for it. So make sure any policy you develop actually is ready for that. So if you have to look at it periodically, you have to make sure that you don't put anything in there that's outdated within days, and be ready for change. Kim?
So as we've talked about, we are providing resources. So I will also drop a link to this in the chat here in a second, but you can scan this QR code. In here are the board approved AI policy itself. So you can see our policy from the very top of it to the bottom. We also have the use case library and also our self-assessment tool. Any of these are free for you to look at. I just ask, you shouldn't be able to edit them in the folder, but I just ask if you can, by chance, save your own copy. Any of these are to look at. If you can't access the information, you can always shoot myself, David or Maarten an email. So yeah, we will be happy to answer any questions about the policy going forward, or just anything you guys have to ask.
Can you see me? Oh, there we go. Okay.
There we go.
I was like, am I here? Where am I? Sometimes I just get lost in the virtual abyss between the backstage and the stage. So thank you all so much for all of the information that you shared in there. We have some incredible questions that have come through that I'd love to ask with our few minutes we have left. You touched sort of on the perimeters of this, but one of the questions I think is great is, how do you balance taking time to build a thorough policy while taking advantage of new tools in a fast-paced, like ever-changing AI world? And I'm curious sort of about how you have thought about this, but also given the rapidness of tool development moving forward, if you have any suggestions or thoughts here as well, maybe even for folks who have less of a robust team.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. It goes to the heart of what we're trying to do with this policy and implementation. So the policy itself is really geared towards taking advantage of all the different ways in which AI can touch a nonprofit, right? So in our discovery process, we identified 3 different ways in which we can engage with that technology. The first one is standalone, right? So things like ChatGPT or even like Practivated, your tool is something that you can subscribe to as an individual and use as an individual. The second level is integrated. So for example, Salesforce has a tool, I believe it's called Einstein, which is built into Salesforce and can turn on and off as an organization. And then, Copilot is an example of what we call the enterprise level system, right? So in all these 3, you have all these different development cycles. And when we were thinking about our policy and how people were going to use technology, we needed to limit ourselves to what is not applicable across all these 3 different levels and what is applicable to every single one of them, right? And this is where we're going when we say guiding human behavior. This is about, okay, so if you're using ChatGPT, how does your and Kim can talk a little bit about our rubric that we developed. Like, we really ask people to go through this actual framework and say, like, okay, answer the questions for yourself. Are you sure that this is keeping all PII safe, right? Are you sure that this is not perpetuating stereotypes? So the idea is that you don't say you can't use this or that tool, but you did give people the actual tools to evaluate which tool actually does or does not do it. Now, some things you don't have any idea. Like, you just really do not know whether or not this applies. So in our structure, we have two resources for that. One is we have a governance committee that is built of kind of like the of our internal AI task force members that have subject matter expertise that can actually help kind of figure out, like, what are the things that you need to think of when you're thinking about using this tool, right? The other is really going directly to our vice president for tech ops and discussing, like, how can we ask from the provider to give us clarity on, like, whether this fits with our ethical framework. And in that way, and I hope, Helena, that answers your question, right? Like, in that way, you can basically say to people, it is, if a new tool comes out 2 months from now, those same ethical standards apply. Right? It doesn't matter whether all of a sudden that is completely different. We're still the same organization with the same values, the same mission, the same vision. So we feel like that is more nimble than what David talked about, is like the do's and don'ts list. Because if you say, like, hey, don't use this tool, all of a sudden that tool is actually better at what it does, or do use this tool, and then all of a sudden they start doing these things that you don't really want that tool to do. So you have to be ready for the future. So I hope that clarifies it a little bit.
Yeah, and it sounds like, tell me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like there's, both the tool side of things and then the use of the expectations on the individual for the use of that tool, right? Like with Practivated, we don't take in any PII information. You won't even find anywhere where it says put a full name. But I guess somebody could put a full name in the first name column, right? And like, as a technology company, we can't control that. So there's like this, like, making sure that you go to your tech providers and are getting clarity on all these things, and then some like rules and guidelines for users too, which feels so important.
Yeah, and just one thing to add is we very consciously refer to other policies that govern certain aspects of this work as well, right? So we have a separate PII policy. We have a separate software use policy. We have a separate licensing policy. So whenever that was already covered somewhere else, we didn't include it because we already have that covered.
So, okay, so there's a few questions in here that I'm going to try to combine kind of for the last one, which is, I think there's like this overarching question around like AI upskilling, literacy, readiness, training initiatives, and like, how's that going? And then maybe how that intersects with permissions or allowances around tools for certain like segments of your team, right? Do you have different budgets for different teams that allow, or do you get, if you're going to get a license to something, does every single person in the organization definitely get a license? That I know you were talking about what you said before around sort of like individual user experiences and things like that. Talk to us about that piece, kind of the professional development side of it.
David, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. No, I can talk about that. So we have multiple divisions within United Way, and some of them are operating a little bit differently. So my division, we started working on upskilling our team of 12. A little before we started working on the policy development. They were happening kind of in tandem. And so for us, it was coming together on a monthly basis, talking about the ways we thought we could use it, what applications we could apply it to within our organization and our daily work, and then showing each other different test cases. So, hey, I tried to use it to do a predictive analytics model. Here's how that went. Here's how we documented it, sharing prompts with each other. We also identified a number of different trainings that we wanted to do to help us develop certain skills. It is a little tough right now because, again, the tools are so rapidly advancing that you might do a training, and as soon as you're done, it's not that it's outdated, it's that it's just not totally up to date. So that was the main way we approached it. And then similarly, in thinking about how it was budgeted, each one of our divisions has its own budget. There also is some larger budgeting for certain IT tools. For United Way, something really important to us is having an equitable workplace. If one person has access to a tool that suddenly enables them to be 50% more efficient than somebody else who doesn't have access to the tool, that's a problem. And so trying to balance that out, but at the same time, not over investing into a tool just because, hey, AI is neat. And so how do we balance that? So our division, within our budget, we got ChatGPT licenses for all 12 of us. And now I say all 12 of us. I believe we got about 8. So a few of us are sharing them. That's one way to do that. It is $20 a month, so it's not the cheapest thing in the world, but it's also relatively affordable. We're thinking about the cost of IT solutions, programs, software. It is very, very affordable. In terms of the larger organization, there's a pilot program with about 30 or so people in it. Those folks have ChatGPT license. They have not gone out to everybody else just yet. And so that's where we're testing it to see if it's the right tool for us. And then we'll kind of move from there. So it's just going to be an ongoing thing. I would say, to me, the number one thing I tell everybody in terms of upskilling yourself, just get in it and play with it. Just get in it and try stuff. People think it's very complex. They think it's really difficult. They think it's really challenging. But once you actually use it, it's like, oh, it's like working with a person in a lot of ways. So of course, there's a couple tricks here and there, but work in it, talk to people about your ideas, and just collaborate.
I also think that David is burning the lead here, and not saying that he is one of our big mentors in the organization. So included in the pilot program, it's also we have mentor partners that basically have a group assigned to them that can go to them as like, hey, can I? And then you work together on something that is AI related. At the same time, we do have a pretty robust library of freely available LinkedIn Learning resources and all kinds of other trainings that we can get for free on other nonprofit platforms that we typically share in this large group called the Pioneers. This is something where the people who are interested in it and are part of this pioneering group really take care of each other. So it's kind of like it's a very interesting grassroots, kind of like everybody's is knowledge sharing situation that very organically creates this kind of like upskilling mood in the organization. So it's the combination of both people inspiring each other to do these things and formal outreach by our tech ops people.
I love that. And if I know we have to go, but I'm going to sort of combine the two pieces that you said at the end to check an assumption. It sounds like maybe because of, David, what you were saying before around the accessibility of some of these tools and the ease with which people can find success, it actually allows for maybe unexpected teammates to be able to lead something or bring something to the rest of the team, which I think that's such a special part of what generative AI in particular enables.
Yeah, absolutely. So I work on our fundraising research and analytics team, and one of the people within my group that I'm supporting is in government relations. And so he has an idea. I don't even know what the idea is just yet, but he threw time on my calendar. We're going to meet, I think, next week, for 30 minutes, and we'll just kind of brainstorm and figure out if we can do something. And him and I otherwise would almost certainly never be on a project together. Maybe a committee, but not a project. And so it creates a lot of conversations. And for me, it's really exciting because people I otherwise might not talk to are going to swing by my desk and be like, hey, do you think I could use this for something I'm doing in Excel or project management? And being able to share that stuff quickly, it's very gratifying.
I love that. As somebody who has commonly been brought to tears by like sending a mass email, the fact that I like lead a technology company, I feel like is attributed to like how accessible, these tools become. So I love hearing what it's doing for the culture of the organization too, and bringing people together. Okay. Thank you all so much. The conversation does not have to stop here. We have a lounge session. So if you did not get one of your questions answered, or you want to have more of an intimate conversation, Al is going to put up on the screen also an opportunity to give feedback. We want to know, what did you learn? Give feedback to us over at Fundraising AI, to our incredible speakers. We're so grateful for this conversation. So grab that QR code, give us some feedback, and then head on over. No playbook, no problem, happening in the lounge with all of our incredible guests here. And so if you forget how to get to the lounge, just go to the reception area, navigate over to lounge, find the table that you're looking for, click on join. You can turn on the camera and microphone, or you can listen in the background, whatever it is that you feel like you need right now. I'm going to give a few announcements because we have just so many incredible things happening so quickly over here. We've learned so much already today, and we have a lot more to go. So I'm going to take a few moments and give some announcements for everybody. But if you want to head on over to the lounge, you can do so right now. So here are announcement number one is the AI Sparks Pass. So the summit is a spark, right? But the idea is that we want to make sure that this spark does not fade. And so that is where the Sparks Pass comes in. You get 12 months of unlimited Spark sessions, fresh topics each month, tools, use cases, skills, and so many other short, practical, nonprofit first strategies. This is perfect for individuals or teams who want to stay sharp year round. It's just $350 for the year until September 17th. So if you want to keep the sparks flying, see what I did there, you can use the code FAI Summit at checkout. So that's going to get thrown up for you. This is super fun new thing we're doing this year. So grateful to our friends over at Play for making this happen. You also get your Amplify kit. So as a Fundraising AI Global Summit attendee, you have unlocked something really special, which is the Amplify kit. This kit is packed with thousands of dollars in exclusive savings, templates, resources, all generously provided by our speakers and sponsors. Think of it as your go-to toolkit to help you turn what you're learning here into action so that you can save time, work smarter, and amplify your impact long after the summit ends. We know particularly with end of year giving, you are going to need and want access to all of these things. So you can access the Amplify kit right now under the resources tab. And don't worry, we'll also send it to your inbox to make sure that you get it. I wanted to take a quick moment and thank our sponsors again, this incredible community of sponsors who are leading the movement for responsible and beneficial AI in our sector. Because of their support, this learning experience is completely free to attend, and our recordings, resources, and content are free to access year round. So make sure you visit the sponsor booth located in the top navigation area to explore the tools, tech, and partnerships to help you adopt AI responsibly and take your fundraising efforts to the next level. Before we break, I want to give a huge shout out again to our amazing presenting sponsors, Giving Tuesday and Virtuous, for making the summit possible. Giving Tuesday needs no introduction, but they are the global movement inspiring generosity every day, everywhere. Virtuous is the responsive fundraising platform helping nonprofits build meaningful supporter connections and grow impact with confidence. We are so grateful for the ways these sponsors have gone above and beyond. And I'm tickled that I actually get to do a sponsor shout out for my own company, which feels a little bit surreal at the moment, but I'm going to highlight Practivated for a moment. So Practivated is an AI-powered donor conversation simulator and fundraising coach that strengthens fundraising teams and supports fundraisers. I'm going to see what my team wrote about it. So fundraisers practice in a no-pressure environment while leaders gain insights into team-wide strengths and opportunities. So imagine like a flight simulator, but for donor conversations. And our goal here is helping organizations build confidence, drive donor engagement, and improve fundraising outcomes. We want to help you have better conversations and be able to connect more deeply and authentically with your donors. And so you'll meet your first AI coach for fundraisers. Her name is Tivy. She's an octopus. We love Tivy. You'll love Tivy. And we want to help you practice those donor conversations in a safe, no pressure space and get that instant feedback. You can try a free session today. Ooh, I did not know they were giving out a free trial. You cannot get this anywhere else. So try a free session today and build confidence one conversation at a time. They're going to drop that link for you right there. And then I'm also going to take a moment and shout out Salesforce, the #1 AI CRM, where humans with agents drive customer success together with AI, data, and customer 360 apps. So if you want to learn how you can build relationships that drive change with Salesforce for nonprofits, head on over to the link that we will share with you as well. And I think we also get to hear a little bit more about Salesforce in this upcoming video.
The two most powerful words in the world that we know are, what if? And today, thousands of organizations are saying, what if? With the power to act on those words like never before. What if you could empower every employee with a limitless digital workforce? One that listens, learns, and acts all day, every day. Well, this isn't some far-fetched science fiction fantasy anymore. No, it's happening right now with AI from Salesforce. It's called Agentforce. Agentforce turns your vision into reality. Think about it, a future where every student, client, citizen, and customer experiences the best service possible. And your people? Well, now they're free to focus on the work that matters most. And all you have to do is bring your dream. Imagine that. What if?
Okay, I'm back on. All right, can you hear me again? Okay, so last thing about Salesforce, before I forget, just for the Fundraising AI Summit registrants, Salesforce is offering a free download of their 2025 Nonprofit Trends Report to see how nonprofits are finding new ways to meet rising demand. So grab your copy of that. We're going to drop that link for you as well. And then we get to talk about what is coming up next, you guys. Okay. So we're dropping the link. Now we're going to be talking about what's happening on all these stages coming up. So we have an incredible lineup happening right now. On the Amplify stage is the Great AI Debate. Will generative AI be a force for good in the social impact sector? I am pretty thrilled with the fact that we are putting a debate on stage. I feel like we need more nuanced conversation. We need more people advocating loudly for their positions around AI. So super excited about that. But I have to tell you that my favorite people in the world are coming onto the innovation stage. So here we are going to be talking about what donors really think about AI and why it matters. Cherry and Koshi, Nathan Chappelle, you do not want to miss this session. I have seen some of the behind the scenes of this data. There is going to be so much insight dropped, and truly two of my favorite humans in the whole wide world. And then following that, we'll have From Overwhelmed to Overflowing, AI that fuels year-end abundance with our friends over at Bloomerang. On the impact stage, we're going to be talking about building AI readiness, from data hygiene to team culture, from our friends at Giving Tuesday. And then supercharged leadership, how to embrace AI and lead what's next. And you can see that our session on the Amplify stage comes with CFRE credit, but you cannot go wrong, y'all. There is so much here for everybody. And please do not forget, you will get the recordings. So even if you cannot go to all of them live, you will have access to all this information after as well, thanks to our incredibly generous sponsors. I am going to run to the next innovation stage with Nathan and Cherian. I hope to see you over there. So much for us to learn about what our donors really think about AI and why it matters. So I'll see you over there soon.